You shouldn't have found that, my mom whispered. I had no idea Grandpa's secrets would haunt every part of our lives. Now we can unsee the truth. I still remember the first time I felt like the ground beneath my family was cracking. It was one of those nights where the air felt thick, almost sticky, and Mom was unusually quiet at dinner, poking at her salad as if it could swallow the tension for her. I don't even think I realized it at the time, but looking back, it was the moment I started noticing the cracks we'd all been pretending weren't there. I was 17, maybe 18, and like most kids, I thought I knew my family. I thought I knew the shape of our lives, the stories, the rules, the little traumas that get swept under the rug because they're family business. My grandfather, he was always this shadowy figure in our house. I didn't know him well, not really. He had passed away before I was 10, but his presence lingered like a scent you couldn't wash off. People would say things like, "Your grandfather was a complicated man," and I'd nod, pretending I understood, because I didn't want to ask questions. And even if I had, I don't think anyone would have answered. We never talked about him. Ever. That was the rule, unspoken but strict. But a few months ago, I found something. It started innocently enough. I was in the attic, looking for old photo albums because I was trying to piece together a school project on family history. Boxes stacked haphazardly, dust so thick it coated my hands like flour. And then, tucked behind an old trunk, I found a leather-bound notebook. It was my grandfather's, I'm sure of it. The handwriting was loopy, meticulous, and then, as I flipped through the pages, the content started changing. Ordinary notes, receipts, mundane stuff, until the entries began describing deals, meetings, names I'd never heard, and money, lots of it. Not the kind you just stumble upon in savings accounts, but the kind you don't ask questions about. I remember freezing, heart thumping so loud I was sure my parents would hear it downstairs. And then panic. Because for some reason, I felt like this notebook wasn't just a record of business, it was a confession. And suddenly, I understood why we never talked about him. Why there were empty silences in the room whenever his name came up. The more I read, the heavier it felt, like the air itself was pressing down on me. When I finally confronted my mom, because I couldn't keep it to myself, I thought she'd laugh, or maybe get angry that I had been snooping. Instead, her face crumpled in a way I'd never seen. She went quiet for a long time, just staring at the wall, and then she whispered something that made my stomach drop. "You shouldn't have found that. Some things are better left buried." I didn't understand at the time. I mean, I did in a way, but only halfway. I couldn't imagine that my grandfather, the man everyone talked about like he was some charming rogue, was tied to things that could ruin lives. And yet, here it was, written in black and white, staring back at me from the yellowed pages. After that night, I couldn't even look at my family the same way. My parents were quieter, sharper, sometimes tense for reasons I couldn't name. Family gatherings felt like walking on thin glass. I wanted to talk about it, to make sense of it, to untangle the knots in our history, but every attempt ended with a wall. A look. A sigh. Not now. Not yet. And then there was my younger sister, Lily. She's only 15, but she senses everything, like some kind of little radar. She asked me one night, out of nowhere, if Grandpa had ever done anything bad. I almost laughed. Her innocence made it sound like she was talking about something in a cartoon. But then I saw the fear in her eyes, and I realized she already knew something was off. She felt it. Maybe she had always felt it. The thing is, this secret isn't just about what Grandpa did. It's about what it's done to all of us. The silence, the half-truths, the constant, gnawing feeling that we're living in a house built on something rotten, something we've been trying to ignore for decades. And now, it's like someone pulled back the curtain, and there's no going back. I tried, so badly, to bring it up again with my parents. Carefully, gently. I said, "We can't just pretend this didn't happen. Maybe if we face it, we can fix. I don't know us." And my dad, he looked at me like I had grown another head overnight. He said, "Fix it? What do you think you're talking about? That was a long time ago. It's done. But it's not done. Not for me. Not for Lily. And every time I see my mom flinch at a random noise or her hand tremble while making coffee, I know it's not done for her either. The past isn't past. It's this living, breathing thing that hangs over us like a storm cloud that no one wants to acknowledge. I guess part of me is terrified. Part of me wants to bury that notebook back in the attic and pretend I never saw a thing. But the other part, the part that won't shut up, keeps flipping through the pages in my mind, connecting dots, imagining what could have been, what could still be fixed. I feel like I've inherited not just the memory of Grandpa's actions, but the responsibility to do something about it. To make sure we, as a family, don't let it fester any longer. But how do you make a family confront something that's been hidden for decades? How do you convince people to face the dark corners of their own history when it's easier to keep the lights off? I don't know. I'm not sure anyone does. I only know that I can't look away anymore. And somehow, in the middle of all this chaos, I feel guilty. Guilty for discovering the truth. Guilty for even thinking about confronting it. Guilty for the tension that now hangs in every room I walk into. Maybe it's selfish. Maybe it's naive. But I can't stop. Because the longer we wait, the heavier it gets. And I think, no, I know, we're already drowning in it. I tried talking to Lily about it again a few nights later. She was sitting on the floor in her room, sketchbook open, pencil moving like she was trying to exorcise something with every line. I sat on the edge of her bed, hesitant, because I still wasn't sure how much she really understood. You know Grandpa wasn't exactly normal, right? I said, twisting the hem of my hoodie. She didn't look up at me. Just kept drawing, lines intersecting, sharp and messy. I know, she murmured. Mom and Dad, they don't like talking about him. Yeah, I said. But I found something. Something about him, something bad. Really bad. She stopped drawing then, pencil hovering in the air. She finally looked at me, eyes wide but not scared, more serious than I've ever seen her. Like illegal stuff. I nodded. Yeah, stuff that makes me think. Maybe some of the way we are, all the weird tension, all the secrets, maybe it started with him. She frowned. So it's kind of our fault. No. God, no, I said quickly, alarmed. It's not our fault. It's his. But it's like he left this mess for us to deal with, and we're just stuck with it. And that was when I realized how much of a mess we really were. The silence, the guilt that clung to every word, every glance, every laugh that felt slightly off, like we were all waiting for someone to catch us. Grandpa's choices had infected our family like some kind of slow poison, and nobody wanted to admit it. So I started looking for ways to confront it. I wanted therapy for us, some kind of group session where we could peel back the layers of lies and half-truths, maybe finally breathe without the weight of history pressing down. But when I brought it up, my mom stiffened. My dad's jaw tightened. And Lily, she looked hopeful, maybe even desperate. But the adults shut the door before anything could happen. I started sneaking more into the attic after that. Not obsessively, I tell myself, though maybe I was. I needed to understand. The notebook was like a map, every page revealing a new corner of our past that had been deliberately obscured. Some of it was just confusing. Names, dates, numbers. But other parts made me sick. Deals with people I don't even want to think about. Money exchanged for things I'm still not sure I want to know. And letters. Letters that didn't make it into the notebook. Just folded and hidden, addressed to people who I guess were enemies, or worse. I started feeling like I couldn't trust the walls of our house anymore. Every family photo, every knick-knack, every corner felt like it was hiding something. And when I tried to talk to my parents again, casually, carefully, they would dodge or change the subject, or, worst of all, look at me like I was insane. And then one night, something happened that broke the fragile barrier of avoidance we'd all been living behind. My dad was going through some old boxes in the garage. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was, hiding behind a stack of cardboard, pretending to look for something trivial. And then I heard it. His voice, low and unsteady. I can't believe he dragged us into this. I can't believe, all these years, and nobody said a thing. I froze. He sounded human. Vulnerable. I had never heard him sound like that before. Not like the dad who fixed things, who made rules, who smiled on the surface but kept his own storms hidden. Vulnerable. I stepped forward, almost accidentally. Dad! He jumped, then glanced around like he just realized I was there. But instead of yelling, he sighed. Long, heavy, like he'd been carrying the weight of decades in his chest. I thought it would just die with him. I thought if we ignored it, it would go away. But it didn't, I said softly. No, he admitted. It didn't. It was the first time I'd heard my dad admit anything, really. That he was scared. That he was lost. That he'd been protecting us by lying by omission, by pretending nothing happened, by pretending he could control the consequences of choices made long before we were born. After that night, things shifted. Slowly, painfully. My mom started talking too, sometimes in fragments, sometimes in whispers over coffee when she thought I wasn't listening. She told me about the fights, the threats, the fear that had always lurked in the background. About the nights she cried alone in the kitchen because she didn't know how to keep us safe from a past we didn't even understand. And Lily, well, she became this little anchor in the middle of the storm. She drew, she wrote, she asked questions I didn't have answers for, and sometimes I think she was the only one keeping us all from unraveling completely. But here's the thing. I realize that confronting the past isn't like in the movies. There's no dramatic reveal where everyone hugs it out and understands each other perfectly. No, it's messy, awkward, emotional landmines everywhere. Sometimes we scream. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we just sit in silence. And that silence is heavy, but it's something. At least it's real. I've tried to explain to my parents why we can't keep hiding it. Healing isn't about forgetting, I said. It's about acknowledging so we don't carry it into the next generation. So Lily doesn't grow up thinking silence is the only way to survive. And they hear me. I think they do. But hearing isn't the same as acting. Change doesn't happen overnight. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. And the weight of a grandfather's choices doesn't disappear just because we finally speak them out loud. Still, we're trying. Somehow we're trying. Therapy is on the table, though not scheduled yet. Conversations happen, though they start and stop awkwardly. And the notebook. I've hidden it again, but I know I can't keep it locked away forever. It's part of our history, part of the puzzle of why we are who we are, and I have to face it eventually. The other night, I found my dad staring at an old family photo, the one where Grandpa is grinning, arm around my dad's shoulder, and my mom is laughing, oblivious to anything darker lurking beneath. He didn't say anything, just traced the lines of the picture with his finger. And for a second, I thought he was going to crumble. But he didn't. He just breathed. And that's when I realized something. Maybe confronting the past isn't about erasing the darkness. Maybe it's about learning to live with it, to carry it without letting it define us. To talk about it, argue about it, cry about it, until the weight becomes something we can bear instead of something that crushes us. It's going to be a long road. Messy, frustrating, emotional, and sometimes I hate that we're on it. But at least we're on it. At least we're moving, instead of pretending the storm isn't coming. Because the storm, it's here. And I've decided I don't want to run from it anymore. The first real confrontation happened on a Sunday afternoon. I didn't plan it, not really. I just couldn't take the silence anymore. We were sitting in the living room, Mom knitting, Dad scrolling through his phone, Lily doodling in her sketchbook, and I felt the surge of urgency that I couldn't ignore. I can't keep pretending anymore, I said, voice louder than I intended. We have to talk about him, about Grandpa, about what he did and how it affects us. Mom's knitting dropped to her lap. Dad's phone clattered onto the coffee table. Lily sat frozen, eyes wide like she'd been holding her breath. You don't understand, Mom said, her voice shaking. Some things are too big, too heavy. Talking about them won't change them. No, I said, finally letting the words tumble out. But ignoring them is making us sick. It's poisoning everything. Every fight, every silence, every look we give each other. It's him. It's Grandpa. And it's all still here, alive, hanging over us. Dad ran a hand through his hair. It's not that simple. We didn't ask for this. We didn't choose to be part of his mess. And now you want us to drag all this out in the open. Yes, I said, because hiding it isn't protecting us. It's suffocating us. The room went quiet, except for Lily's pencil scratching paper. Then she looked up, small but defiant. I want to know, she said. I don't want to grow up thinking silence is safety. I want the truth, all of it. Something in that moment broke through the last barrier. Mom's shoulders slumped. Dad's hands unclenched. And for the first time, I felt like we were all willing to step into the dark together. We didn't fix everything that day. We didn't hug it out or reach some perfect understanding. But we started talking. Small pieces at first. Stories my dad remembered, fragments my mom had tried to forget. And yes, parts of the notebook I had been too afraid to bring up. We cried. We argued. We laughed awkwardly at memories that were both ridiculous and sad. And every time the conversation threatened to derail, Lily would say something, usually blunt, sometimes painfully honest, that forced us back to the heart of it. I realized something important. Confronting the past doesn't mean excusing it. Grandpa did terrible things, no matter how you look at it. But confronting it allows us to separate ourselves from it. To say, we acknowledge this, we feel it, we understand it, and we choose to live differently. There's a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in our house now. We don't pretend the past isn't there. We don't avoid the attic, or the old photo albums, or each other's questions. It's awkward. It's heavy. Sometimes it feels like walking through mud, one step at a time. But it's real. And I think real is better than pretending. I started journaling about it, too, because talking isn't always enough. The notebook I found, I haven't opened it since that first confrontation, but I keep it close. It's like a reminder that history matters, even when it hurts. That silence isn't neutral. That avoiding it doesn't make us safer. It just chains us to something we didn't choose. Mom has begun therapy, slowly. Dad talks to me sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and Lily is asleep, about things he's never told anyone else. And Lily, she draws constantly, her sketches now filled with shadows, faces, shapes that feel like attempts to understand the invisible weight of our family. I don't know if we'll ever fully heal. Maybe that's not even the point. Maybe the point is that we're moving. That we're willing to look, to feel, to speak, and to stumble through it together. The other night, I caught a glimpse of Dad in the hallway, holding the old photo of Grandpa. He didn't say anything. He just looked at it for a long time, then set it down gently, like placing it on the edge of something fragile. And I realized he's letting the past exist without letting it control us. That's all we can do. Sometimes I still feel that pang of anger, that ache of betrayal, that confusion about how one man's choices can ripple through generations. But I've learned something. The darkness doesn't define us. It shapes us, yes, but it doesn't have to imprison us. We get to decide how we live with it, how we carry it, and how we talk about it. We're far from perfect. There are still arguments, still silence, still moments when the weight feels unbearable. But now, at least, we face it together. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the start of something real. Because the truth, ugly, messy, painful, doesn't go away. It waits. It lingers. And pretending it isn't there doesn't make it disappear. But speaking it aloud, letting it breathe, letting it exist in the light instead of the shadows, that's the only way we can start to heal. And so we talk. We cry. We argue. We remember. We grieve. And slowly, painfully, we begin to understand that family isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. About showing up, even when the past is heavy, even when it hurts. About saying, we'll face it. Together.